the morning my parents marched into our glass-walled conference room with a lawyer. I was leading the quarterly all-hands. They weren't there to congratulate me on the 45-ill valuation, only to invoice me for every birthday party I stole by working. What they didn't know was that this office, this company, I built all of it on the bones of their absence. And today, in front of 200 employees and a live investor feed, I would settle the bill, my way. My name is Maren Cole. I am 33 years old, and I am the CEO and sole founder of Praxis Ledger. Until 45 seconds ago, I was in absolute control. The 28th floor of Northcrest Tower is my fortress. We built it from an empty concrete shell. Now, it's a hum of quiet, focused energy. 200 employees fill the central atrium, a glass and steel amphitheater overlooking the Grayford skyline. The light is bright, white, and unforgiving. Behind me, the main array displays the title slide. Q3, All Hands, Praxis Ledger. I was in the middle of a sentence, the good part. The part about logarithmic growth in our enterprise compliance module. The key, I was saying, is that the new data residency protocols are not just a feature, they are a fortress. We didn't just meet our Q3 targets. Clack, hiss. The heavy glass doors at the back of the atrium slid open, breaking the pressurized seal of the room. It wasn't an employee. It wasn't security. They walked in. My father, Alden, wearing a suit that was clearly new and a size too large in the shoulders, like a costume for a role he hadn't quite memorized. My mother, Lena, clutching a black handbag so tightly her knuckles were skeletal. Her eyes, wide and bird-like, darted everywhere, at the exposed ductwork, the polished concrete floors, the faces of my employees, everywhere except at me. Between them, a third man. He was all polished leather shoes and anxious energy, carrying a stiff, mahogany-colored briefcase that seemed to weigh him down. The sound in the room didn't just stop, it was vacuumed out. 200 people, silent. The only noise was the low, steady hum of the HVAC system, suddenly roaring in the quiet. The live feed camera in the back, broadcasting to our investors in the Seattle Engineering Hub, swiveled slightly, its red REC light an unblinking eye. I haven't seen my parents in person in nearly 5 years, not since the first trade papers reported our valuation. The man with the briefcase stepped forward. He had the strained, overly confident smile of someone paid by the hour to start fires. "Ms. Maren Cole?" he projected, his voice too loud for the acoustics. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply watched him. He took my silence as confirmation. "My name is Arthur Vance. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Cole regarding certain unresolved familial obligations." Familial obligations. The phrase hung in the sterile, multi-million-dollar air like cheap cologne. A few people in the front row, my core leadership team, shifted in their seats. My mother, Lena, finally spoke, but she wasn't speaking to me. She was looking past me, toward the AV booth, her voice trembling with a rehearsed, theatrical grief. "Maren, darling, we didn't want to do this. We tried to call." A lie. I checked my call logs this morning, every morning. Vance, the lawyer, stepped up to the main podium, the one I had just been using. He snapped open his briefcase, the brass locks echoing like gunshots in the silence. He didn't produce a summons. He produced a stack of papers, neatly bound. He handed them to my father. Alden cleared his throat. He held the pages with 2 hands, his eyes fixed on the text. He was reading a script. "We have prepared an invoice," he announced. A nervous cough broke out near the data science pods. An invoice. "We are calling it," he continued, his voice gaining a shaky confidence, "an emotional invoice. It is a detailed accounting of the past 15 years. 15 years of deliberate familial neglect. Maren, 15 years where you prioritized this." He waved a hand dismissively at the company I had bled for. "Over the people who raised you." Vance, the lawyer, was already moving. He unplugged my laptop feed from the main console and plugged in his own. my Q3 results, my company's triumph, vanished. An Excel spreadsheet filled the 20-foot screen. The room let out a collective, sharp intake of breath. Title: Invoice, Outstanding Parental Compensation, FY 2010, FY 2025. My blood didn't run cold. It didn't boil. It just focused. My internal firewalls, the ones I'd coded myself in the early days, kicked in. Isolate the threat. Analyze the payload. I could read the line items from where I stood. Line 1. Missed birthday. Age 19. Emotional damages and forfeited catering deposit. $4,500. Line 5. Missed Thanksgiving. Age 22. Travel reimbursement. Non-refundable tickets and familial distress. $8,200. Line 12. Missed Christmas. Ages 24 to 29. 6x. Loss of joy. Premium at $15,000. $90,000. Line 20. Missed graduation, master's degree. Public embarrassment and stolen celebration, $35,000. It went on and on. 15 years of holidays I'd spent coding in a freezing garage. Birthdays I'd worked double shifts to pay for my own tuition. Graduations they hadn't even known the dates for. All of it monetized. At the bottom, a subtotal, and below that, one final, audacious line. Upbringing interest. Compounded 8% annually on 18 years of support. $710,000 hound. Jonah, my CFO, materialized at my side. He's a man who finds comfort in numbers. And these numbers were an aberration. He was pale, his fury barely contained. "Marin," he whispered, his voice a low vibration. "Say the word. We have security on this floor. I can have them removed for trespassing. This is a shareholder-sensitive event. Say the word." Sss. I held up one hand, palm facing him. Wait, I didn't take my eyes off my father. Alden reached his grand finale. He looked up from the paper, directly at me, his eyes gleaming with a strange, righteous victory. "For the time you stole, for the support you never repaid, for the family you abandoned, the total outstanding balance is—" He paused. He wanted the room to feel the weight of it. $1,200,000. A ripple of shock, of disgust, washed through my team. That wasn't a joke. That was a salary. That was a seed round. "We expect payment within 30 days, my father concluded, folding the paper, to avoid further action. The lawyer, Vance, stepped back in, taking center stage. The muscle. "Of course," he said, his smile slimy and broad. "We understand this is delicate. My clients are, above all, a loving family. They would prefer to handle this privately." He tapped his briefcase. "A lawsuit would be messy. The press. You understand. Workaholic CEO abandons grieving parents. The optics are terrible for a company like yours, especially one built on trust and accountability." He was threatening me, in my house, in front of my people. "However," Vance continued, "my clients are reasonable. They are willing to forego the cash settlement in exchange for a simple, clean equity transfer." There it was, the real payload. "Let's say 9% of Praxis Ledger," he said, as if offering a discount. "A small finder's fee for the 18 years of startup capital they provided you. And perhaps," he added, 2 honorary seats on the advisory board, for appearances, to show the world what a united, loving family you are. They weren't here for $1.2 million. They were here for the $45 million valuation. They were here to dilute my life's work into a settlement. I let the silence stretch. I let the investors on the feed lean into their monitors. I let the weight of their demand, their audacity, settle over the room. My mother was looking triumphant. My father looked proud, as if he'd just closed a big deal. The lawyer looked like he was already spending his commission. Then I moved. I turned my head, just slightly, toward the AV booth at the back of the room. Mike, our head of comms, Looked like he was about to be sick. "Mike," I said. My voice was perfectly even. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a fiber optic cable. Mike jumped. "Yes, boss." "Are you still recording?" Yes, ma'am. The investor feed is still live. The internal archive is rolling. Do you want me to cut it?" "No," I said. "I want you to keep rolling. I want you to make sure that camera has a clean, tight shot on our guests. Ensure the audio is capturing every word." A new shockwave hit the room. This wasn't damage control. This was a deposition. Vance, the lawyer, sputtered. "This is a private negotiation. You are not authorized to record this interaction. You are on private property. Mr. Vance," I said, turning to face them fully. "You interrupted a publicly disclosed, recorded shareholder meeting. You have absolutely no expectation of privacy." I looked at the front row, the empty leather chairs reserved for our remote board members. "Please," I said, gesturing to the seats. "Sit down." They didn't move. The confidence was draining from their faces, replaced by a dawning confusion. The script had just run out. "Sit," I repeated. It was not a request. My father, then my mother, moved stiffly to the chairs. The lawyer, Vance, looked from them to me, his jaw working silently. He sat, placing his briefcase on his lap like a Kevlar vest. I walked back to my podium. I picked up my wireless clicker. My hand was as steady as the steel beams holding up the ceiling. I looked at my parents. I looked at the spreadsheet that was still burning on the main screen. "An invoice," I said, testing the word. "It's a bold choice. $1.2 million. I turned my gaze to my team, to the 200 people who had trusted me, worked weekends for me, built this place with me. Praxis Ledger is built on one single, unwavering principle: accountability. We track every transaction. We log every entry. We believe that every debt must be paid." I turned back to the three of them. "So, if we're going to talk about debt," I said, my voice dropping, "let's talk about all of it. Let's audit the books." I raised the clicker. I pressed the button. The emotional invoice spreadsheet vanished. The screen went black for one jarring second. A new title slide faded into view, white text on a black background. It didn't say Q4 projections. It said, "Legacy Liabilities, an Audit." The words "Legacy Liabilities" glowed on the screen behind me, stark and absolute. In the front row, my father, Alden, shifted. He looked at the lawyer, Vance, expecting him to object. Vance opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know the rules of engagement here. He was prepared for a corporate negotiation, not an audit of a life. My mother, Lena, pulled her jacket tighter. "Marin, this is hardly the place," she whispered, her voice carrying in the tomb-like silence. "We are your family." "Family," I repeated. The word echoed in my headset microphone. "Let's talk about that." My mind didn't just drift back. It was a hard cut, a scene insertion. Ashmere Falls, our house on Willow Creek Drive. From the street, it was the American dream rendered in vinyl siding and chemically green turf. The lawn was a testament to my father's obsession with appearances, edged, fertilized, and uniformly cut. Inside, the centerpiece of the living room wasn't art. It was the family schedule, a massive gold-framed whiteboard where my mother listed every planned interaction. 7:00 p.m. Family dinner, pot roast. Saturday, 5 p.m. Oak Hill Portrait Studio. We were a performance. I was a prop. I see that now. Our home was a stage set for an audience that never came. The real life happened in the margins. In the quiet moments they were too busy to notice. Their invoice mentioned my 13th birthday. $8,400 for emotional damages. I remember that day. My mother was furious, not at me, but at her friend, Cynthia, who was coincidentally hosting a surprise promotion party for her husband on the same night. "It's just terrible timing," Marin, Lena had said, zipping up a new dress. "You understand. The regional manager will be there. This is important for your father's network." "But My party, I'd said, holding the box of uninflated balloons. We'll do it next week, she'd promised, applying a second coat of lipstick. We'll celebrate big next week. Next week never came. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the glow of a Sunday night football game washing over me. They'd left it on, a digital babysitter. I found a single candle, jammed it into a slice of bread, and lit it with my father's barbecue lighter. I watched the wax drip onto the crust, while the crowd on TV roared over a field goal. I blew out the candle during the instant replay. I don't remember what I wished for. I probably wished for them to come home. I learned, slowly, that their love was a resource allocated to whatever best served their public image. My achievements were only valuable if they could be mentioned at a dinner party. My failures were personal inconveniences. This brings me to my first liability. I looked at my father. You listed my first job as a period of neglect. You called it my selfish phase when I took the night shift at Norcrest Analytics. Vance shuffled his papers. My clients were concerned for your welfare, working such hours. They were concerned about the optics. I cut him off. My voice was flat, devoid of the emotion that used to choke me. I took the night shift, midnight to 8 a.m., cataloging data tapes, because it was the only shift that didn't conflict with my classes, the classes I was paying for. I remember those nights. I'd ride my bicycle the 3 miles to the corporate park at 11:30 p.m. I'd finish my shift, the sun just starting to burn off the morning fog, and ride straight to the community college for a 9 a.m. statistics class. I slept in 4-hour bursts. One night, a brutal February storm hit. The shift supervisor let us go an hour early, at 7 a.m., because the roads were freezing. I got home at 7:20 a.m. The house was dark. I put my key in the lock. It wouldn't turn. The deadbolt was thrown, from the inside. I knocked. I banged. I rang the bell. Through the frosted glass, I saw my father, in his bathrobe, walk to the door, look through the peephole, and then walk away. I sat on the frozen porch for 45 minutes, my hands too numb to even text. At 8:05 a.m., my mother opened the door, her face a mask of annoyance. "You woke your father," she'd snapped. "You locked me out. The deadbolt was on." "We have a schedule, Marin," she'd said, as if explaining something to a child. "We locked the door at midnight. We assumed your job would respect that. You're being selfish, waking the whole house." I wasn't a daughter locked out. I was a disruption, a scheduling conflict. I sat in my car, a '98 sedan I'd bought myself, and blasted the heat, waiting until I could feel my fingers again before driving back to campus to sleep in the library. In the conference room, my mother was shaking her head, a look of profound, practiced confusion on her face. We were just trying to teach you responsibility. Marin, we were worried." "You were worried," I agreed. "You were especially worried the month I turned 18. I advanced the slide. A new section appeared. Liability Item 1. Fiduciary misappropriation. The lawyer, Vance, sat bolt upright. "That is a slanderous accusation." "Is it?" I asked. I looked at the 200 faces of my team. "This is a compliance company. We believe in primary documents." I remember the day. They sat me down at the kitchen table. It was piled with forms. "It's for your college fund, darling," my father had said, his voice dripping with paternal pride. "A special Parent Plus loan. We're going to co-sign. Use our good credit to get you the best start." I remember the relief. Maybe they did care. Maybe this was how they showed it. Not with cakes, but with serious, adult things. I signed where they told me to sign. "They didn't co-sign a loan for me," I said to the room. My voice amplified. "They took out a $40,000 unsecured line of credit against my Social Security number, my 18-year-old, clean as snow credit history. They signed me up as the primary applicant and themselves as guardians. The money," I continued, "was not for college. It was gone in 6 months. A new patio, a trip to Bermuda, a down payment on a boat my father needed for his networking." The blood drained from my father's face. My mother's eyes darted to the exits. I found out when the first default notice arrived at my dorm, I said. The dorm I was paying for with 2 jobs and 3 academic scholarships, the scholarships I got because I knew, deep down, you would never be my safety net. I looked at their invoice, the digital ghost of it still in my mind. You want to talk about missed events? Let's talk about line 5. Missed Thanksgiving, age 22. You billed me $200 for that, so. I remember that Thanksgiving. I was a junior analyst. My first real post-college job. I had saved for 4 months to buy a plane ticket home. I wanted to try again. I wanted to believe the family schedule could, just once, include me. 2 days before my flight, I got a call, not from my parents, from the Ashmere County Sheriff's Office. My father had been cited, again, for hosting a party that violated noise ordinances and involved furnishing alcohol to his networking buddies, some of whom were underage interns from his firm. The fine was $5,000, due immediately, or he'd be processed. My mother's call came an hour later, hysterical. You have to help us. Marin, your father will lose his job. This will ruin us. It's just a misunderstanding. I cashed out my plane ticket. I emptied my savings account. I wired them the $5,000. I didn't miss Thanksgiving. Dad, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I paid for it. I ate instant ramen in my studio apartment while I worked overtime to make up the rent I'd just sent you. The $8,200 you're billing me for? I think we can call that a rounding error on the debt you owe me. They were silent. The performance was crumbling. The painted smiles were gone, replaced by the ugly, raw foundation underneath. I learned to build my own traditions. I learned to be my own family. When I closed my first client at Praxis Ledger, back when it was just me and a laptop in a rented garage, I went to a bakery. I bought myself the most expensive, single slice of chocolate cake they had. I went back to the garage, lit a match. I didn't have candles, and sang happy birthday to my company, quietly. So quietly, no one could hear. My mother kept meticulous family albums. That's what she told people. They were really scrapbooks of receipts and achievements. I remember seeing one, just before I left for good. She'd taped my high school graduation photo, the one she and my father showed up for 20 minutes late, onto a page, and right next to it, she'd taped a copy of the month's cleared electricity bill. See, she'd said, tapping the page, all our milestones, all paid for. That's who I was to them, a photo, a utility, a resource. I looked at my team. I learned a long time ago that family isn't a calendar event. It's not an invoice. It's not who you pose with for pictures. I turned my gaze back to the front row, to the 3 people who had breached my fortress. It's who shows up when you crash at 2 a.m. It's who holds the line when the system fails. It's who, when you have nothing left to offer, stays. My thumb was on the clicker. The answer was never you. Now, let's review the first liability item, the loan application. I have the signed documents right here. I clicked the button, the first scanned document, my forged signature clear as day, filled the screen. The audit had begun. The slide showing the scanned loan application hung in the air. The silence in the room thick and heavy. My father's signature, looped and arrogant, next to the box labeled Guardian, was incriminating enough. But this wasn't the core of the rot. This was just a symptom. That $40,000 liability, I said, my voice resonating in the quiet, is important. It defined the next 5 years of my life. It explains every single line item on your emotional invoice. It's the reason I was at Norcrest Analytics. Norcrest. The name tastes like stale coffee and ozone. Before Praxis, I was a senior compliance analyst at Norcrest. It was a good, stable, soul-crushing job. I was overqualified, underpaid, and drowning in the debt my parents had racked up in my name. My job was to manually review transaction logs for institutional clients. Tedious, painstaking, human work, and because humans did it, it was riddled with errors. I wasn't just doing my job. I was trying to automate it. I spent my nights and weekends, the holidays you billed me for, writing a script, a heuristic module that could scan millions of transaction logs in seconds, flagging anomalies that a tired human auditor would miss 9 times out of 10. I built a user interface. I stress-tested the logic. I called it, internally, Ledger I. I logged over 600 unpaid hours on it. It wasn't my assigned task. It was my way out. It was, I thought, my masterpiece. My direct supervisor was a man named Damon Reeves, a classic corporate predator, all smiles, expensive suits, and a talent for absorbing the ideas of his subordinates. He saw my work. He called it a cute pet project. Then, at the quarterly VP presentation, the one I wasn't invited to, he presented Project Aegis. It was my code, my architecture, my logic flows. He had paid an external firm to design a new logo and splash screen, but the kernel was mine. I watched the live stream from my cubicle. My stomach felt like it was full of wet cement. My name wasn't in the technical documentation. It wasn't in the special thanks slide. I had been erased. I did what you're supposed to do. I went to HR. I brought my original scripts, my server timestamps, my personal notebooks with the initial architecture diagrams. I sat opposite a woman named Linda, the SVP of Human Resources. She listened with a look of practiced, infuriating empathy. When I was done, she folded her hands. "Marin," she said, her voice soft, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about intellectual property." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said, my voice shaking. "He stole it." "That's a very strong word," she cautioned. "In a collaborative, team-based environment, ideas are shared. Damon is the team lead. It's his job to synthesize the team's efforts for management. This wasn't a team effort. This was mine. I have the logs." She held up a hand. "You're clearly very passionate," she said, as if passion were a diagnosable condition. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Can I offer you some gentle advice, woman to woman?" I just stared at her. "You come across as very intense, very abrasive. When you claim ownership so aggressively like this, it can make people uncomfortable. Perhaps you should focus on being a little more feminine in your communication. Be a team player. You'll go further." Abrasive, intense, feminine. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. The firewalls in my head, the ones that had been under construction since my 13th birthday, snapped into place. I saw the system clearly. It wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. I said, "Thank you for your time." I went back to my desk. I emailed my resignation, effective immediately. I packed the 2 photos on my desk, my favorite mechanical keyboard, and one other thing. I did not take the Ledger I code. The code, as Linda had so clearly pointed out, belonged to Norcrest. But I took my notebook. Not the notebook with the Ledger I architecture. I took the other one, the one where I had documented every single control gap, every regulatory loophole, every structural flaw in Norcrest's system that Ledger I didn't fix, the problems Norcrest didn't even know it had, the vulnerabilities I was planning to tackle next. That notebook wasn't their IP. It was my roadmap. I walked out of the Norcrest building at 10 p.m. It was pouring rain. A cold, miserable November night. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't care. I stood on the curb, the rain plastering my hair to my face, and I felt clean. I clicked the slide. The conference room was silent. A new title appeared: Asset Genesis and Incorporation. "I founded Praxis Ledger 2 days later," I said, my voice echoing slightly. "My entire seed round was $3,200, the last of my emergency savings. My headquarters," I said, looking at the $200 million view from our current floor, "was a 200-square-foot, unheated garage in the warehouse district. It smelled of damp concrete and old tires. My desk was a hollow-core door laid over 2 sawhorses. My laptop was a refurbished, second-hand model with a flickering backlight that gave me migraines. The coffee wasn't just bitter. It was burnt. reheated 3 times in a microwave that sparked if you ran it for more than 60 seconds. I coded for 18 hours a day. I lived on protein bars and sheer, unadulterated spite. I look at my parents in the front row. Their confusion is hardening. This isn't the story they told themselves. This isn't the daughter who just got lucky. My first client, I continued, was not a bank. It was a regional supermarket chain. Their CFO was skeptical. He told me I looked a little young to be playing with his accounting, but their internal audit was a mess, and they were bleeding cash. I ran the first beta of Praxis on their procurement data. My system wasn't built on Norcrest's code. It was built on the flaws I had documented. It was designed to catch the things they missed. In 6 hours, my dashboard lit up. A $2.7 million discrepancy in their fresh produce logistics, a ghost supplier, a kickback scheme, embezzlement. The CFO, a man with 30 years of experience, went white. He cut me a check for $50,000. And more importantly, he called 2 of his friends in the compliance world. The rumors started. The Garage Girl's tool, that's what they called it. It stuck. The name Praxis began to circulate in the dark corners of financial compliance. Banks started calling, logistics firms, healthcare providers. They didn't care that my office was a garage. They cared that my tool found things their million-dollar Big Four auditors missed. We were growing too fast. I needed servers. I needed people. I needed real capital. I took my first investor meeting, a VC from a top-tier Sand Hill Road firm. He wore a Patagonia vest and shoes with no socks. He loved the numbers. He loved the tech. He hated the optics. "The tech is solid, Marin," he'd said, sipping his $12 cold brew. "Just solid. But the board? They'd be more comfortable with a recognized name leading the technical side. A male CTO, someone credible, someone they can trust with this level of security." He offered me $5 million on a $25 million valuation. The condition was that I step down as CTO, stay on as head of product, and let them hire my boss. I didn't even let him finish his sentence. "No," I said. "Marin, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable," I said, closing my laptop. "You're offering to buy my company, fire me, and then have me watch as you run it into the ground. No." I walked out. I never wanted to be CEO. I am a builder. I am an engineer. I want to solve the puzzle, find the flaw, and build the fortress. But I learned at Norcrest, and I learned in that coffee shop, if you don't own the table, you are on the menu. So I became the CEO. I became the CTO. I became the head of sales and the head of HR. I learned to read term sheets. I learned to hire people smarter than me. I learned to build a company where feminine communication wasn't a critique. It was a strategic advantage. I learned to build a place where the best idea wins, no matter who it comes from. I look at the 200 faces in this room, my team, my real family. The $45 million valuation from our Seed Plus round wasn't a lottery ticket, I said. It was a receipt. It was the sum total of every 3 a.m. coding session, every no, every locked door, every stolen idea, and every invoice you sent me, Dad. I looked at them. While I was building this, while I slept on a folding cot in the server room of our first real office, you were calling, not to ask if I was okay, not to see if I was alive. You were calling to ask when I was sending money, to cover the interest on the boat, to pay the new fines you kept racking up, the emotional distress you're billing me for. It was all one way. I still drive my 2012 hatchback. I still buy my coffee from the machine in the lobby. Jonah, my CFO, yells at me about it, but he doesn't understand. I do it because I know, to the penny, what this company cost. And that, I said, my voice low, brings me to the real origin of this meeting, because while I was building, others were watching, people who felt owed. My mother is looking at my father. Her face is pale with a dawning, terrible realization. You weren't the only ones who felt left behind by my selfish phase, were you, Dad? I click the slide. A new section heading appears. Third-party interference and conspiracy. The slide glowed behind me. Third-party interference and conspiracy. In the front row, the lawyer, Vance, saw his opening to regain control of the narrative. He sprang from his chair, all righteous indignation. "Ms. Cole, this is an absurd and slanderous diversion. Your employment history at another firm is utterly irrelevant to my client's claims." He gestured to my mother, his voice softening, becoming the reasonable advocate. "We are here to resolve a simple, private, family matter, a matter of services rendered and love unrequited." He nodded to Lena, back on script. My mother fumbled with the clasp on the bound document she'd been clutching. She opened it, her hands visibly shaking, but she found the page she was looking for. She was reading. "Yes, Marin," she said, her voice thin. This is about the law. It's not just your feelings. It's about quantum meruit." Quantum meruit. The legal Latin, so foreign in her mouth, hung in the sterile air. As much as one has earned. They had found the legal doctrine for billing someone for services rendered without a formal contract. They had, in effect, Googled how to invoice me for raising me. "Line item 1, she read, her finger tracing the text. "Birthday 13, emotional damages, 8,400. "Why that amount?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. It includes the non-refundable deposit for the ballroom at the Ashmere Country Club," she said, indignation rising. "The one we had to cancel because you were unwell. You embarrassed us." Unwell. The lie was so old, so calcified. She probably believed it. I wasn't unwell. I was grounded, locked in my room. More accurately, because I had failed a math final the week before and brought shame on the family's reputation. The party's cancellation was my punishment. Now, 15 years later, it was an asset on their balance sheet. Vance stepped in, the consummate professional. "And of course," he boomed, "there is the matter of loss of consortium, a perfectly valid, recognized claim, my clients." He gestured to the two people staring at their laps. "Have suffered the profound loss of their only child's companionship, affection, and society, all due to your willful, obsessive prioritization of these corporate endeavors." He gave a sad shake of his head, playing to the camera. "It's a tragedy, a genuine tragedy, but one they are generously willing to rectify, right now." He put his hands on the podium, leaning in. "Let's go back to the offer. Marin, it's more than generous. We are not asking for the full cash settlement of $1.2 million. Not today. My clients are prepared to settle this, and all associated claims, for a modest 9% equity stake in Praxis Ledger." A murmur went through my team. 9%. That wasn't a settlement. That was a hostile takeover. "And," he added, as a gesture of familial goodwill, 2 honorary seats on the advisory board. It's about the image, Marin, the optics, your investors." He nodded at the live feed camera. "We'll appreciate it. It shows stability, unity, a strong family behind a strong company." The word unity was a toxin. He was offering to sell my own company back to me using my parents as the proxy. I let the offer hang. I watched the three of them, the lawyer, triumphant, my father, defiant, my mother, looking at her shoes. "Quantum meruit," I repeated, testing the words. "Loss of consortium." I looked directly at my father. "Dad, you think consortium is a brand of whiskey. Who gave you these words?" Betrayal, then anger, flashed across his face. "We have good counsel. Marin. Better than you, apparently." Vance puffed up. "That is privileged attorney-client." "I wasn't asking you," I said, my gaze locked on my parents. "Who wrote your script?" And then the tell. It was instantaneous, a micro-expression, a fractional, involuntary flicker. My mother's eyes darted left, not at me, not at my father. She glanced toward the back of the atrium, toward the heavy glass doors. I followed her gaze. My entire team was watching me, but I was watching the reflections in the floor-to-ceiling glass wall opposite me. At the very back of the room, Near the elevator bank and the steel cold brew taps, a man was standing. He was trying to look casual, as if he'd just wandered in. He was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. He was not an employee. He was not an investor. I knew the suit, a shark gray, custom-tailored Zegna. I knew the posture. I knew the predatory stillness. Damon Reeves, my old boss from Norcrest Analytics, the man who had presented Project Aegis, my Ledger I code, as his own, the man who had sat silently in an HR office while I was told to be more feminine. My heart didn't pound. It didn't race. It compressed. It became a cold, dense, focused point of energy. This was the missing variable. This was the root of the conspiracy. He saw me see him. He didn't flinch. He gave a small, arrogant half-smile, a tiny shrug. "What are you going to do about it?" A few of my senior engineers, ex-Norcrest people who had followed me, recognized him. A low, angry murmur started at the back. "Damon," I said. My voice, amplified by the headset mic, was not loud, but it cleaved the room in two. Every head turned. Damon Reeves froze. His smile faltered. He hadn't expected to be called out. He was a puppeteer, not an actor. "Damon," I said again, "you're a long way from the 12th floor. This isn't your building, but you seem to be part of the meeting. Why don't you come all the way in, join your clients?" The room was electric, the buzzing of 200 people realizing this wasn't a family dispute. This was a corporate attack. The lawyer, Vance, spun around, his face a mask of sudden, profound confusion. My father, Alden, looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He looked terrified. Damon had no choice. The spotlight was on him. He straightened his tie, pushed off the wall, and began the long walk down the center aisle, his expensive shoes clicking on the polished concrete. He composed his face back into that familiar, confident smirk. "Marin," he said, his voice projecting. "What a coincidence. I was just in the building, for a demo with another tenant on the 30th floor. Heard a commotion. Didn't realize you were hosting an intervention." He was good. He was always good. "A demo," I repeated. "That's odd, because you're wearing one of our visitor's passes." I pointed to the lanyard around his neck. The white visitor badge was clearly visible. Damon's smirk tightened. "Your father was kind enough to meet me in the lobby. He signed me in. We were going to grab coffee after your meeting, to catch up." "You were catching up," I said. "And you, a senior vice president at Norcrest Analytics, a direct competitor, just happened to be here, signed in by my father, on the one day he and my mother decide to stage a legal ambush during a shareholder call?" "The timing is unfortunate," Damon said, smooth as ice. "I'm sure it is," I said. I looked at Jonah, my CFO. Jonah was on his tablet, his fingers flying. He already knew. He looked up at me, his face pale with rage. "The visitor log," Jonah said, his voice shaking. "Badge was issued at 8:15 a.m. Escort, Alden Cole. Purpose of visit, family council." "Family council," I repeated. I looked at Damon. "So you're not here for a demo. You're here as their advisor." Damon saw the coincidence play was dead. He switched tactics instantly, pivoting to offense. "All right, Marin, fine," he said, dropping the pretense. "Yes, I've been talking to your parents. They're worried about you. And frankly, as your old mentor, I am too." He turned slightly, addressing the room, the camera. "I'm concerned that you've built this entire, impressive company," he smiled, "on a foundation that doesn't entirely, legally, belong to you." There it was, the other half of the pincer movement. The room erupted in whispers. He was threatening me. He was here to publicly back up their claim. He was here to imply that Praxis Ledger was built on the stolen Ledger I code from Norcrest. He thinks he has me. He thinks he's created an unwinnable, two-front war. My parents attack my character. He attacks my intellectual property. He thinks I'll have to settle, that I'll be so desperate to make the IP claim go away that I'll give him and his puppets whatever they want. So, I said, piecing it together in real time, you, an executive at a competing firm, advised my parents, two private citizens, to ambush my all-hands meeting. You fed them legal terms, you helped them draft an invoice, and you planned to be the surprise witness to backstop their emotional claim with a corporate one. I'd call it due diligence, Marin, he sneered. The code. It's very familiar. I'm just here to make sure Norcrest gets its due, and that your family, he put a comforting hand on my father's shoulder, gets theirs. You've been helping them for a while, haven't you, Damon? I asked. This wasn't a one-time coffee date. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. This is a compliance company, Damon, I said. We don't just build the tools, we use them. We believe in primary documents. We believe in paper trails. My thumb was on the clicker. The slide, third-party interference and conspiracy, was still glowing behind me. I looked at my mother. Mom, did he help you with the spreadsheet? The $8,400 for my 13th birthday? Was that his number? She wouldn't look at me. I looked at my father. Dad, when did you open Ashmere Consulting LLC? My father's blood drained from his face. I was wondering, I said to the room, why my father suddenly had a consulting income for the last 6 months. He's never consulted on anything but his golf swing. I clicked the button. The slide advanced. The new title was Conflict Network Asset Flow Analysis. The room let out a single, collective gasp. It was a node diagram, clean, simple, devastating. A box on the left, Damon Reeves, Norcrest. A box on the right, Ashmere Consulting, LLC, owner, Alden Cole. And between them, a series of arrows, wire transfers, each one dated, time-stamped, and quantified. You've been paying them, I said, my voice clinically detached. Small, regular transfers, $5,000 here, $2,500 there, totaling $32,000. Damon Reeves was no longer smiling. He was, for the first time since I've known him, completely, utterly silent. The payments were the mechanism. The memo lines were the motive. My forensic accounting team, the best in the business, had pulled the full wire data. I clicked again. A line item zoomed to fill the screen. Wire, $5,000. Date, 08/14/2025. Sender, D. Reeves. Recipient, Ashmere Consulting. Memo, Marin Leverage Prelim. I clicked again. Wire, $2,500. Date, 09/02/2025. Memo, Family Doc Prep. Vance, the lawyer, was staring at the screen, his mouth open. He looked from the screen to Damon, to my parents. He was just realizing he wasn't the shark. He was the chum. He was aiding and abetting a conspiracy. You didn't just advise them. Damon, I said, my voice low and cold. You funded them. You paid my parents to attack my company. You manufactured this entire crisis, gave them the legal script, and planned to use their emotional distress as a smokescreen to launch a baseless IP claim. I looked from Damon, to my father, to my mother. You were hoping I'd be so ashamed, so desperate to avoid a public fight with my loving family, that I'd settle. I'd give them their 9%, and they'd kick a piece of it back to you, and maybe I'd even throw in a little extra to make the Norcrest claim go away. I looked at the three of them, a triumvirate of greed and resentment, now fully exposed under the harsh white light of my boardroom. This, I said, gesturing to the diagram of their conspiracy, is the real invoice. The trap isn't closing, it's shut, and the teeth are in. The conflict network diagram hummed on the screen. The air in the room was so cold, so still. I could hear the faint click of the hard drives in the server rack down the hall. Damon Reeves, for the first time in his insulated, arrogant life, looked like a man who had miscalculated. My father was staring at the floor, his face the color of ash. My mother was twisting the strap of her handbag, a small, repetitive, panicked motion. The lawyer, Vance was the most interesting. He was slowly, almost imperceptibly, sliding his chair back, distancing himself from his clients. He was looking at Damon, then at my parents, then at the screen. He was recalculating his billable hours, his retainer, and his potential exposure as an unindicted co-conspirator. "This diagram," I said, my voice clinical, "is incomplete. This only tracks the payments from Damon Reeves to Ashmere Consulting, LLC, my father's shell company. But Damon, you were sloppy. You needed both of them on the hook. You needed to pay my mother, too." I clicked the slide. A new note appeared, connected to Damon. "Lena Cole, personal savings." "You didn't use wire transfers for her," I continued, speaking directly to Damon. "That was too traceable. For Lena, you used digital P2P apps, small, casual payments, $500 here, $1,000 there." I clicked again. The transaction log filled the screen, pulled directly from public-facing app data. Memo: consulting fee. Memo: reimbursement, docs. Memo: family support. "You were funding their lifestyle while you armed them," I said. "You paid for their weapons, and this," I gestured to the bound, emotional invoice on the table, "is what they built. It's a very impressive, very fraudulent paper trail." Vance found his voice, though it was a reedy, thin version of what it was 30 minutes ago. "This is circumstantial. Payments for consulting are not a conspiracy. You have no proof of intent." "Intent," I said. "You're right. This is a compliance company. We don't just follow the money, we follow the motive." I advanced the slide. A screenshot of an email appeared. To Alden Cole, Acola, ashmere@gmail.com. From Damon Reeves. D. Reeves, private@gmail.com. Subject: the V2.4 strategy. V2.4, I said to the room. That's the internal code name for our next software release. It's highly confidential. Damon, you shouldn't even know that designation. Damon's face went white. He knew exactly what he'd done. The email was short. I read it aloud. "Alden, the meeting is set. You must stick to the emotional script. The invoice is the lever. The goal is the emergency board meeting. Push Marin for shares. Once she buckles, we split the equity 50-50. Norcrest Legal will handle the IP claim simultaneously. This is the only way we both get what we're owed." The room was dead silent. My father sank lower in his chair. "He didn't just advise you, Dad," I said. "He gave you a script. He promised you a 50-50 split of the 9% you were demanding, 4.5% for you, 4.5% for him. In exchange for what? Manufacturing a crisis that would tank our valuation and allow him to leverage a bogus IP claim? That's not family counsel. That's wire fraud. That's corporate espionage. This entire plan," I continued, "was built on your historical behavior. It was predictable, because you've done it before. You've been signing my name to things that benefited you since I was a teenager." I clicked again. The screen showed a scanned document from 15 years ago, a yellowing carbon copy. "This is the application fee receipt for the 2010 Platinum Visa card, the one taken out in my name, the one that started the $40,000 debt." I zoomed in on the signature line. Applicant: Marin Cole. And just below it, Guardian signature, on behalf of primary cardholder, my father's unmistakable, arrogant scrawl. "You taught me about fraudulent signatures before I even knew what a credit score was. Dad, you're not a conspirator, you're just consistent." "But the email," I said, "isn't even the best part. The method. That's my favorite part." I motioned to the AV booth. "Mike, play audio file, leverage coaching 01. A hiss of static, then Damon's voice. "No, Lena, you don't understand. You can't just ask her. You have to perform. You have to cry. You have to talk about the empty chair at Thanksgiving. You have to make her feel guilty. In public. In front of her team." My mother's voice, whiny. "But what if she just calls security? She's so cold. Damon, she's not the girl we raised." Damon's voice. She won't. Not if you're her mother. Not with investors watching. She's trapped. You are her family. That's the leverage. You have to weaponize the love. You must create the emotional leverage to force the settlement. The audio clicked off. My mother was staring at the floor. Tears of humiliation, not grief, tracing her cheeks. The performance was over. The lawyer, Vance, sprang to his feet, his chair scraping loudly. This is illegal. You recorded my clients without their consent. This is inadmissible. This is entrapment. I almost smiled. No, Mr. Vance, it's not. I turned to my parents. Do you remember last month? When you called me for that final family dinner at the steakhouse? The one where you begged me to come home, to reconnect? They didn't look up. That was the dinner, where Damon was coincidentally at the next table and joined you, where you spent 2 hours trying to create emotional leverage, and then, the next day, you, my mother, emailed me the audio file. The room looked confused. Jonah looked confused. She emailed it to me, I explained, with the subject line, "This is the pain you are causing us. Listen to this." You genuinely thought, that if I heard a recording of how much pain I was causing you, that I would finally break. You thought I would capitulate. I looked at Damon. And you, Damon, the email, the V2.4 strategy. You didn't send that to my father's email. You CC'd my father. You sent it to me. Damon's head snapped up, pure animal panic in his eyes. You thought you were CCing your burner account, acolashmere@gmail.com, but your fingers typed what they've been typing for 15 years. You typed M. Cole. You CC'd M. Cole, praxis@praxisledger.com. You CC'd me. They didn't just give me the rope, I said to the room. They delivered it, overnight, with a signed receipt, all of this evidence, the wire memos, the audio, the conspiracy email. It's all 100% legally obtained. It's not a lawsuit. It's an inbox. I let the silence settle. I walked to the edge of the stage, my heels clicking. I looked at my father. You taught me invoices. I looked at my mother. I learned interest. I stood perfectly still. I didn't breathe. I counted. 1, 2, 3. Jonah, my CFO, had his phone in his hand, his thumb hovering over a single contact. 4. On the main screen, in the bottom right corner, a new line of text appeared, a simple, gray status update. Status: Package Ncrest CF001 filed and received by U.S. District Court, Grayford. Timestamp 10/23/2025. 10:18:04 a.m. 5. I looked at Vance. That was my legal team. They just filed a 300-page civil complaint against Mr. Reeves for tortious interference, against my parents for civil conspiracy, and against Norcrest Analytics for corporate espionage. The preliminary injunction request includes all the evidence you just saw. It's already time-stamped. It's already on the docket. The room was a vacuum. From the speakerphone in the center of the room, a panicked voice, one of our lead investors from the live feed. Marin, Jesus Christ, are we protected? Is the company's valuation secure? Jonah stepped forward. His voice was steel. Completely. All IP has been re-verified and ring-fenced by third-party auditors for months. We anticipated this. Furthermore, all executive-level funds related to the last round have been held in a locked escrow account, pending resolution of this known security threat. The company is insulated. This is not a crisis. This is a cleanup. I turned to the three of them. They were statues. Broken. Pathetic statues. So, I said, my voice soft, here is the choice. It's the only one you'll get. You can stand up, right now, and walk out that door. You will walk past my employees. You will sign out with security, and you will disappear. You will drop the emotional invoice. You will dissolve Ashmere Consulting, and you will never, ever contact me or my company again. I paused. can stay. You can stay here, on camera, and we can move on to Exhibit D. We can discuss the bank fraud charges. We can talk about the rest of the paper trail. We can continue this all-hands meeting, which is now a material witness deposition, until the U.S. Marshals arrive. They're probably already on their way. I gestured to the door. Leave or stay. You have 10 seconds. Damon Reeves laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was a dry reptilian cough, a sound of pure contempt. He looked at the timestamp on the screen, then at me. You think that's a checkmate, Marin? A civil suit? He sneered, regaining his footing. He was a man who lived in depositions. A lawsuit wasn't a threat. It was just a change in venue. That's just paperwork. It's noise. It'll take years. We'll bury you in discovery. And while your expensive lawyers are busy chasing wire transfers, my real claim, the claim that you built this entire 45 million company on my intellectual property, will gut you in federal court. You've just started a war on two fronts. Little girl, you'll bleed out before you ever see a trial. He was still playing the game. He still thought he was on the board. He was still talking about external fights, about courts and judges. He didn't understand. War? I said. Damon, you're still not listening. I didn't start a war. I just ended one. You're still thinking about the courts. You're not looking at the bylaws. I looked at my parents, then at their lawyer, Vance. You came here to demand 9%. You don't understand. You're not here to get shares. You're here to lose them. Vance, who had been quietly trying to merge with the upholstery, looked up. What are you talking about? My clients hold no equity. This entire presentation is irrelevant. Is it? I said. Your clients? No. They're just what's the term? The useful idiots. But their agent, he does. I clicked the slide. The lawsuit, the emails, the audio files, all vanished. A new slide appeared. Clean, black text. Praxis Ledger, Inc., Articles of Incorporation, Section 9.4, the Canary Clause. This, I said, my voice as cold and flat as the steel beam beside me, is a clause I had our lawyers draft during our Seed Plus round. It's a protective measure. We are a compliance company. We are also, unfortunately, a company founded by me. I knew this day might come. I read from the screen. Section 9.4, a stipulation for the protection of the founder and, by extension, the company's core IP. It states that any unsubstantiated, coercive, or fraudulent claim made against the company or its founder by a non-arm's-length party. I paused and looked at my parents, specifically defined herein as family members. I moved my gaze to Damon, or their acting agents. I continued. At the founder's sole discretion, trigger an immediate mandatory buyback option for any and all preferential shares, options, or carried interest held by the initiating parties or their associated entities. I let that hang in the air. The buyback price, I said, is set at $1, total. Damon scoffed. That's insane. That's not legal. And as your lawyer just pointed out, I don't have any shares. Your parents don't have any shares. That clause is a fantasy. It's meaningless. Is it? I said. I looked at the investors on the feed. Our history is important. Before Praxis, I was at Norcrest Analytics. But before that, Damon, you were at Norcrest Ventures. You were an advisor. You advised the seed fund. Grayford Partners. That gave us our first $250,000. Damon's face didn't just go pale. It went translucent. Grayford Partners got a small advisory stake, I continued. And as part of that deal, as a thank you for your mentorship, the mentorship that involved you stealing my work, you personally received 50,000 preferential stock options in my company, Praxis Ledger, the company you just tried to defraud. I clicked the slide. A scanned document appeared, the signature page from the Seed Plus Round Advisory Agreement, and there, at the bottom, was his signature, arrogant, sharp, and legally binding. You signed it, Damon? I said. You signed the document that contained Section 9.4. You signed, agreeing to the canary clause, because you were so sure it was just boilerplate. You were so sure it would only ever apply to a deadbeat ex-boyfriend or a distant cousin asking for a handout. You never, ever thought, in your wildest, most narcissistic dreams, that the agent of the family would be you. I took a step toward him, but you became an agent. You funded them. You scripted them. You conspired with them. You triggered the clause. As of 10:18 a.m., when my legal team filed the complaint codifying your conspiracy, you officially triggered Section 9.4. I looked at him, then at the screen, then back. Your 50,000 options? The ones currently valued at just over $2.2 million, as of right now, they are worth $1, my dollar. Damon's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. He was, for the first time in his life, speechless. Vance, the lawyer, was no longer a shark. He was a spectator at a feeding. He looked at Damon, horrified. That's not... Is that legal? Can that clause be valid? Jonah, my CFO, stepped forward. He didn't look at Vance. He addressed the investors on the call, his voice pure, cold fact. It is 100% valid. It was authored by Oric Harrington. It was stress-tested against Delaware state law and was a non-negotiable condition of our Seed Plus round. It was fully disclosed in the data room and independently audited by a third-party validator before Mr. Reeves affixed his signature. We have the validation report. Would you like me to display it? Vance sank back into his chair as if his spine had been liquefied. That, I said, was the financial trigger. Now, we have the procedural one. I clicked the slide. Bylaw 11.2. No contact protocol, coercion and harassment. Section 11.2, I said. Any party, internal or external, found to be engaging in coercive acts, harassment, or bad faith misrepresentation on company property, and I believe manufacturing a $1.2 million invoice to commit extortion, qualifies as bad faith misrepresentation. I looked at the three of them. Will be subject to an immediate and permanent no-contact order, enforceable by corporate security and local law enforcement. As I said the word enforceable, the heavy glass doors at the back of the atrium hissed open. My parents and Damon flinched, spinning around. Two uniformed security officers stepped inside. Not my internal tech hub security. These were the building's main officers, ex-cops, men with the authority to physically remove anyone from the entire tower. They were not aggressive. They were not armed for a fight. They were calm, hands folded. They were a procedure. They were an inevitability. They stood by the door, waiting. They're not here to threaten you, I said, my voice soft. They're just here to enforce the procedure. You have been formally designated as a coercive threat under Bylaw 11.2. They are here to escort you from the premises. I turned my back on them. I faced my team. The 200 people who had been watching this entire thing, silent. Everyone, I said, my voice clear and strong. I know this is not a standard all hands. I apologize for the disruption, but this is why we are Praxis Ledger. This is why we write procedures. This is why we document everything. This is why we believe in an immutable log. I looked at the faces of my engineers, my data scientists, my sales team. We build systems so that when the worst happens, and the worst always happens, emotion doesn't drive the company. The protocol does. We build fortresses, in our code and in our bylaws. This was not a family drama. This was a standard security response, and it is now concluded. The security officers took one synchronized step forward. This was the end. Damon was rigid, his face a mask of silent, impotent fury. Alden, my father, was staring at the floor. And my mother, Lena, broke. It wasn't the performance from the audio recording. It was the ugly, racking, desperate sob of a narcissist who has just lost, definitively and publicly. "Marin!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Marin, please!" The guards paused. They looked at me. She stumbled forward, her hand outstretched. I just wanted you to remember us. To remember your home, she cried, the tears now real, hot, and humiliating. You built all this cold place, and you never looked back. You never came home. We just wanted you to see us. I took a deep breath, the first real emotion I had allowed myself to feel all morning. Not anger, not rage, just a profound, ancient, tectonic exhaustion. See you? I said. I invited you. Mom, I invited you to my community college graduation, the one I paid for myself, the one I finished with a 4.0 while working 2 jobs to pay off your fraudulent debt. I had an empty seat. You and Dad were at a spa retreat in Sedona. You couldn't get a refund. I took another step. I invited you to the ribbon cutting of our first small office, the 1,200 square foot box over the auto body shop. I sent you the address. You texted back. The neighborhood looks dangerous. Darling, we'll celebrate from here. I was 2 feet from her now. I invited you, both of you, to dinner, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, for 5 straight years. I always got the same reply. 5 minutes later. Too busy this year. Marin, just send a gift card. Love you. I looked at her, my voice dropping to a whisper that the microphone carried to every corner of the room. I invited you, for years. You just never, ever came. You only showed up today, when you thought there was something to take. Home didn't come to me, I said. So I built one. I gestured to the room, to the people, to the glass and steel. This. I turned back to the podium. The guards moved to intercept her. Wait, I said. I picked up a single, crisp, white envelope. It had been sitting on my laptop the entire time. You're right about one thing, I said, walking back to them. We should settle the accounts. You gave me your invoice. I held it out to my mother. She was shaking so badly she could barely take it. Her eyes were blurred with tears, uncomprehending. This one, I said, is mine. She fumbled it open. It was a single page. It wasn't a legal threat. It was a bill, on my personal letterhead. Line item 1. 7 years of cognitive and behavioral therapy. To unlearn the core belief that love is conditional and parental support is a transaction. $104,000. Line item 2. Emergency medical treatment, including hospitalization, for stress-induced breakdown and exhaustion. Age 23. Post-Norcrest/pre-praxis. $12,500. Line item 3. Interest and penalties paid on $40,000. Fraudulent loan. 2008 to 2015. $27,800. Total. $104,444 to $300,000. My mother looked up, her face a mask of confusion. We can't. Oh, I'm not billing you, I said. I pointed to the corner of the envelope she was holding. There was no postage stamp, just the small, embossed, silver logo of Praxis Ledger. The company already paid it. Years ago. It was a business expense. We categorized it under asset recovery, the cost of repairing and restoring a foundational asset. I looked at my mother, at my father, at the man who had tried to ruin me. This debt isn't in money. This is just the receipt for what it cost to build me. I nodded to the security team. Gentlemen, please show them out. The 2 security officers moved. Their presence was a physical manifestation of the bylaw. A period at the end of a long, ugly sentence. My mother was shrinking, her sobs now quiet, gasping intakes of air. My father was rigid, staring at the envelope in her hand as if it were a snake. The lawyer, Vance, was discreetly packing his briefcase, his face a neutral mask of, I am no longer party to this. The guards stepped past Damon, their focus on my parents. Sir, ma'am, if you'll come with us. Wait! The word was a gunshot. Damon Reeves, his face slick with a sudden, panicked sweat, his $2.2 million in options evaporating, his reputation in cinders, ripped a USB drive from his jacket pocket. He held it up like a crucifix. You're not done, he yelled, his voice cracking, the smooth corporate veneer shattering. "You think you're so smart. Marin, you think you've won with your little corporate rules and your canary clause. You forgot one thing." He shoved his hand past the guard, pointing the USB at me. "The code! You forgot about the code." The room, which had just begun to breathe, sucked all the air back in. This was it, the final, nuclear option, the one claim that, if true, could unravel everything. "This," he shouted, his eyes wild, "isn't a paper trail. This is proof. This is a side-by-side comparison. Project Aegis versus Praxis V1.0. It's the same architecture, the same logic flows, the same core. You built this all on stolen IP." He was playing to the investors on the call, to my team. He was trying to plant the one seed of doubt that could kill a tech company. "You want an audit?" he screamed at me. "Let's do an audit. Right now. Plug this in. Plug it in and show them. Show them all what a thief you really are." He lunged toward the podium. The guards, startled, moved to intercept him, but I held up my hand. "Stop," I said. The guards froze. Damon froze, his arm outstretched, the USB drive trembling in his fingers. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let the silence stretch, the accusation hanging in the air. My team was staring at me. Jonah was pale. Then I smiled. "Oh, Damon," I said, my voice filled with a profound clinical pity. "You really, really shouldn't have done that." I took a step toward him. "A USB drive. Your proof. Thank you." Damon's face contorted in confusion. "What?" "Thank you for bringing it," I said. "We've been waiting for it. You see, when my legal team filed the civil complaint an hour ago, it included a Class 1 subpoena for all Norcrest documents, data, and materials related to Project Aegis and Ledger I. It also included a preservation of evidence order, forbidding the destruction, alteration, or transfer of any such materials." I looked at the small plastic drive in his hand. "You, a senior executive at Norcrest Analytics, just violated a federal court order. You just transferred proprietary, subpoenaed evidence across state lines and attempted to introduce it, without a chain of custody, into the headquarters of a direct competitor." I looked over his shoulder. Sarah, my head of cybersecurity, a woman with zero tolerance for this kind of bullshit, stepped forward from the forensics pod. She wasn't holding a laptop. She was holding a sealed anti-static forensic kit. "Sarah," I said, "Mr. Reeves has kindly delivered a piece of evidence for our lawsuit. Please retrieve it. Begin the chain of custody log and plug it into the isolated sandbox. Let's see what—" "Proof?" He brought us. Damon looked at the forensic bag as if it were a bomb. "No, wait. This is my— You can't just—" "I can," I said. "You demanded it, remember? Plug it in. Show them all. We're just following your instructions." Sarah, wearing nitrile gloves, took the USB drive from his limp fingers. He didn't resist. He was in shock. She walked it to a mobile, air-gap terminal. She broke the seal on the bag, logged the drive, and slid it into the port. Every eye went to the main screen as the terminal's desktop was projected. A file directory popped up, and then a jarring, angry red pop-up window. "Warning. This device is the encrypted, monitored, and logged property of Norcrest Analytics, Inc. All file access is tracked. Unauthorized removal from premises is a terminable offense and a violation of federal data security laws." The room let out a low groan. Jonah actually closed his eyes. Damon had just, in front of 200 witnesses, confirmed he had walked out of his own company with a corporate-issued, encrypted hard drive and tried to plug it into a competitor's system. He hadn't just brought a copy of the code, he'd brought the whole vault. You can't," Damon stammered, his face ashen. "The file, the comparison file, it's on the desktop. Praxis, theft, proof." "Oh, I'm sure it is," I said, "but we don't need to open it. You're right. Damon, we should talk about the origin of the code. We should talk about intellectual property." I looked at the AV booth. Mike, play archive video, Entrest Sec 2019 04 12 1430 008 MP4. The screen flickered. The Norcrest directory vanished, replaced by a grainy, high-angle security feed. My old cubicle. It showed me. 4 years younger, hair in a tight bun, looking exhausted. I was printing a massive stack of documents. My original architecture diagrams for Ledger Eye. A second video feed appeared in a split screen. Damon's old office. I walked in, holding the stack. The audio was tinny, thin. My voice. Mr. Reeves, this is the final architecture for the module. It's all here. The data flow, the heuristic logic. Damon's voice, impatient, not even looking up. Fine, leave it. Marin, I'll get to your toys when I have time. I placed the stack on his desk and left. The video fast-forwarded. 1 hour later, Damon, alone in his office, looked at the stack of paper. He picked it up. He looked at the first page. He sighed, annoyed. And then he walked over to the blue recycling bin next to his desk and dropped the entire ream of paper, 600 hours of my work, into it. I hit pause. The image of my work, my masterpiece, sitting on top of a pile of discarded soda cans, froze on the screen. That, I said, my voice deathly quiet, was April 12th, 2019, at 2:30 p.m., my resignation email, citing HR's feedback, was sent at 5 p.m. The articles of incorporation for Praxis Ledger, based on the ideas you threw in the trash, were filed the next morning. I looked at him. You didn't steal my work. Damon, you didn't even value it enough to steal it. You threw it away. You told HR it was a collaborative effort while my original, time-stamped architecture diagrams were on their way to a landfill. You built Project Aegis from a digital copy you'd made earlier, but you discarded the proof, the origin. I built Praxis, I said. Not on your code. I built it on the ideas you were too arrogant, too lazy, and too goddamn stupid to even read. The silence was a void. From the speakerphone, the investor's voice again, breathless. Marin, this is... Should we stop the all hands? This is sensitive. I turned to the camera. No, we're almost done. As I said, we are conducting a live training session on professional ethics and intellectual property hygiene. The last bit of fight went out of Damon. He was a hollowed-out shell. He looked, desperately, at his co-conspirators, his puppets. Alden. Lena. He pleaded, his voice a pathetic whisper. Say something. Tell them. This was your idea. 2. The invoice. Tell them. My parents flinched away from him as if he were diseased. My father, seeing his escape, stood up and pointed a trembling finger at Damon. I have never seen this man before, he stammered. He misled us. He told us this was standard procedure. We were tricked. This is his fault. My mother just hid her face, her shoulders shaking. The conspiracy, built on mutual greed, had just dissolved in mutual terror. It's over, Damon, I said. And one last thing. I nodded to the red pop-up on the screen. That USB drive. My team has confirmed its contents. It is, as you said, proprietary Norcrest source code. My legal team, I nodded at Jonah, has, as of 90 seconds ago, forwarded a formal report to the State Securities Commission with a copy to the U.S. Attorney for this district. It details your unauthorized, unlogged, and unencrypted transfer of your company's proprietary source code to a direct competitor in an attempt to manipulate their stock value. I took a step closer. You didn't just try to frame me for IP theft. Damon, you just committed it yourself, in front of 200 witnesses and a live video feed. That's not just a firing offense. That's a felony. Jonah stepped forward. He wasn't holding a phone. He was holding a single, folded piece of paper. He handed it, not to a security guard, but directly to Damon. What is this? Damon's hand was shaking so badly he could barely take it. "It's a summons," I said. "Not from the state, from us. It's a summons to attend an internal arbitration hearing with our board. As a third-party interferer, as per Bylaw 11.2, which you also violated, we'll be discussing the damages you now owe Praxis Ledger for this disruption, for the attempt to devalue our company, and for the security breach you just committed in this room. Our lawyers," I said, "will be in touch with what's left of yours." Damon Reeves took an involuntary step back, then another. He looked at the summons. He looked at my parents, who were now being firmly, but quietly, guided to the door by the guards. He looked at me. He wasn't seeing a little girl. He wasn't seeing his abrasive subordinate. He was seeing the fortress he had tried to burn down, and he was realizing, too late, that he was the one who was going to be consumed by the fire. He had come in here to collect a debt. He stumbled back another step. It was clear to everyone in the room who the real debtor was. Damon Reeves was a dead thing, a breathing statue of a man. His entire net worth, his reputation, and his freedom all circling a drain he had personally unclogged. The summons in his hand trembled. His eyes, fixed on some middle distance, were hollow. He was no longer a threat. He was an exhibit. The lawyer, Vance, had already zipped his briefcase. He stood, adjusted his tie, and gave a stiff, tiny nod, not to his clients, but to me. It was a gesture of surrender, a professional acknowledgement of a superior kill. He then turned and walked, quickly and quietly, out the glass doors, disappearing before the main event was even over. He was a mercenary whose contract had been voided by overwhelming force. The security guards were still, they were waiting. The room, all 200 people, held its breath. The only sound was the low hum of the servers, the digital heartbeat of my company. And my parents, they were still seated, pinned to their leather chairs by the weight of their public, catastrophic failure. My father, Alden, was staring at Damon with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred, the hatred of a fool who has been outmaneuvered by a bigger fool. My mother, Lena, was just gone. Her eyes were blank, the performer, left on stage after the lights had come up, with no lines left to say. I did not go back to the podium. I walked from the center of the stage, my heels clicking on the concrete, to the small table where my laptop sat. Beside it was the other envelope, the white one I had placed there this morning, the one for this specific contingency. I picked it up. It was not a bill. It was not a summons. I walked, slowly, across the space that separated us. The guards watched me. My team watched me. Damon, a ghost, watched me. I did not hand the envelope to my mother. I placed it, gently, on the polished mahogany table in front of her. The sound of the paper sliding on the wood was abnormally loud in the vacuum. She stared at it. "You brought me an invoice," I said, my voice quiet, but the microphone carried it everywhere. "A demand for payment based on a false ledger. I am a compliant CEO. I don't tolerate bad accounting." My father flinched. Damon." "He's done, Dad," I said, my voice flat. "This isn't about him anymore. This is about your account, the real one." My mother's trembling hand reached out and touched the paper. It was a single sheet of heavy, bonded cardstock. The logo at the top was not the Praxis Ledger logo. It was my personal monogram. At the top, a single title. Statement of Presence, M. Cole, account holder. "This is the counter invoice," I said. "You billed me for your time. This is the ledger of yours." I let her read it, but I spoke the words aloud. I wanted the room to hear. I wanted the investors to hear. I wanted the archive to record it. Line item 1. Birthday, age 13. I paused. The image of a candle and a slice of bread. The sound of the football game. Parental status, absent. Line item 2. High school graduation. The memory of an empty seat in the front row. Their arrival. 20 minutes late, during the closing remarks. Smelling of mimosas from a networking brunch. Parental status, absent. Line item 3, college acceptance, full scholarship. The phone call. My mother's voice. Oh, that's nice. Darling, listen, your father's car is making that noise again. Parental status, absent. Line item 4, college graduation, summa cum laude. The single empty seat I had saved. The text message I received an hour later. Sedona is beautiful. You would love it here. Parental status, absent. Line item 5, hospitalization for exhaustion-induced arrhythmia, age 23. The smell of antiseptic, the nurse asking, "Is there anyone we can call for you?" And my answer, for the first time, honest and immediate, no. Parental status, absent. Line item 6, Praxis Ledger Incorporation Day. The terror and the thrill of signing the papers alone in that cold garage. Parental status, absent. Line item 7, first office ribbon cutting. The invitation they'd received and ignored. Parental status, absent. Line item 8, Thanksgiving dinner invitation, year 1. Parental status, absent. Line item 9, Thanksgiving dinner invitation, year 2. Parental status, absent. Line item 10, Thanksgiving dinner invitation, year 3. Parental status, absent. I stopped. The list could have filled the page. It could have filled a book, but the audit was complete. I looked at my mother, whose face was now a crumpled mask of true, agonizing comprehension. This wasn't a performance. This was the raw, undeniable truth. And the final line item, I said, my voice dropping. Today, October 23rd, quarterly all-hands meeting. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother. Parental status, present. I let that hang. Then I pointed to the last column, the amount due column. Total charges for disruption, extortion, and conspiracy, year earned. Balance due, waived. My father looked up, his mind grappling, trying to find the angle. Waived? You're not... I'm not billing you, I said. I'm not suing you. I looked at the two of them, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I felt nothing, the void where a family was supposed to be. To have a debt, there has to be a relationship. There has to be an expectation of payment. I closed that account, years ago. I looked at them. If this is the ledger of what we owe each other, then as of this moment, the balance is 0. We are, finally, equal. My mother let out a small, broken sound. She looked up, her eyes wide, desperate, pleading. The calculating performer was gone, replaced by a terrified, grasping child. "Marin," she whispered, the name a question. Is there no way back? From this? No. No way for us to... To what? I thought. To fix it? To be a family? The question hung in the air. The last, desperate plea for a relationship she had only just realized she'd lost. I was silent for a long time. I considered the question. I considered the two human beings in front of me, wrecked by their own greed. "Yes," I said, finally, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "There is a way back," I said, "but not to family, not to mother and daughter. That is finished." Her face fell. "The way back," I said, "is not paid with money. It's not paid with apologies, because I don't believe them. It's paid with one, simple, permanent act." "What?" she whispered. "Silence. You will leave this building. You will go back to Ashmere Falls. You will never contact me. You will never contact my employees. You will never speak the name Praxis Ledger to another living soul. You will, for the rest of your lives, respect the boundary. You will become, in effect, polite strangers. You will give me your silence," I said. "And in return, I will not pursue criminal charges for fraud. I will not add you to the civil suit. I will let you walk out of here, and I will forget you exist." "That," I said, "is the only deal on the table. That is the way back. To zero. My mother understood. She closed her eyes, a single tear of true grief rolling down her cheek. She had come here for $1.2 million. She was leaving with an enforced, permanent restraining order. My father, on the other hand, was not grieving. He was vibrating with a deep, septic rage. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly. "You," he spat, his finger jabbing the air. "You do this? You humiliate us. Your own family." "You are not family," I said. "You are a liability that has just been neutralized." "You will regret this," he snarled, his face purple. "You'll be old. You'll be alone. You'll have all this money, and you will have no one. You will die alone, and you will regret this day." It was a curse, the last pathetic weapon of a man with no cards left to play. I looked at him, at this small, bitter, terrified man who was my father. I felt the old, familiar sting of that word. Regret. It had been my companion for 20 years. I smiled. A small, sad, final smile. "I've regretted enough for a lifetime. Dad," I said. "I regretted not being good enough. I regretted not being smart enough. I regretted not being the daughter you wanted. I regretted working. I regretted not working." I took a step back, reclaiming my stage. "My entire life has been lived in regret," I said. "That's over. That's the balance I'm waving. The rest," I said, turning my back on him, "is just work." I nodded to the security guards. They stepped forward. They did not touch my parents. They didn't have to. They simply flanked them. "Sir, ma'am, this way." My father gave me one last look of pure poison. My mother wouldn't look at me at all. She was staring at the statement of presence on the table. She didn't take it. They walked, the two of them, and the ghost of Damon Reeves, who seemed to float between them, his 2.2 million summons clutched in his hand. The room was silent. We watched them go. The long walk down the center aisle, 200 pairs of eyes on them. It was not a walk of shame. It was a simple, procedural extraction. They reached the glass doors. A guard opened one. They stepped out. The door closed. The hiss of the pressurized seal, the heavy thud of the magnetic lock engaging. It was done. The room was silent for another 10 seconds. 200 people, staring at the closed door, staring at me. I turned back to them. I walked back to the podium. I looked at the sea of faces, my team, my fortress. They were no longer just curious or shocked. They looked different. They were sitting up straighter. Their shoulders were back. There was a hard, clear, focused look in their eyes. They hadn't just watched their CEO handle a personal problem. They had just been given a masterclass in the company's core values: accountability, transparency, and boundaries as hard as carbon steel. I picked up my clicker. "Now," I said, my voice crisp, clear, and perfectly normal. "If you'll please turn your attention back to the main screen, let's talk about our Q4 projections." The slide advanced. The KPI charts reappeared as if nothing had ever happened. But every single person in the room was standing a little bit taller. My thumb pressed the clicker. The slide with the dense, complex architecture of our V.4 release, the very thing Damon had tried to name his conspiracy after, faded away. The Q4 key performance indicator slide reappeared. Bright colors, bar charts, projections, uptake modeling. It was the most beautiful, boring, and perfectly normal slide I had ever seen. The room was still. The 200 people were processing. They had just watched a corporate execution, a family exorcism, and a legal masterstroke. And now, key performance indicators. "The lesson," I said, my voice as calm and steady as the hum of the servers, "is what this company has always been about: control, transparency, and boundaries." I pointed the laser at the first projection, which brings us to our Q4 enterprise targets. A hand went up. It wasn't a tentative hand. It was a firm, raised hand. Sarah, my head of cybersecurity, the woman who had just handled Damon's USB drive. Her face was, as always, unreadable, but her eyes were locked on me. I paused. "Sarah." She stood. Her voice was clear, respectful, but cut through the room. "Marin, what you just did was extraordinary, and I speak for my entire team when I say our firewalls have never been stronger." A murmur of agreement. "But," she continued, "it raises a question. You just demonstrated, in real time, how to handle a coercive external threat. But what about us? What is the official praxis policy for an employee whose family doesn't show up with a lawyer, but just drains them? The parent who calls 10 times a day, the ex-partner who harasses them on company Slack, the legacy liabilities that don't have a balance sheet but are still costing us productivity and, frankly, our people's sanity." It was a brilliant question, a necessary one. She was asking me to codify my personal victory into a universal corporate protection. I looked at this woman I had hired 3 years ago. This woman I trusted with the keys to my kingdom. "We have a policy, Sarah," I said. "It's part of our standard HR security and wellness protocol. We have procedures for blocking external harassment. We have resources." I paused. "But you're right. It's not good enough. It's not loud enough. And it's not transparent enough." I looked at Jonah. He wasn't surprised. He was already waiting. This, too, had been part of the plan. "Jonah," I said. My CFO stepped forward. He wasn't the numbers guy now. He was the human side of the ledger. "Effective today," Jonah announced, his voice ringing with a conviction I had never heard from him. "We are formally expanding our employee wellness benefits. We are tripling the available funds for mental and behavioral health. Full stop." A sharp intake of breath from the team. "Furthermore," he continued, "we are establishing a new, dedicated, and completely confidential Praxis Resilience Fund. This is separate from insurance. This is a direct grant, administered by a third party, for any employee who needs immediate access to therapy, legal counsel for restraining orders, or emergency relocation services due to a domestic or familial threat." A stunned silence, and then, it started at the back, with the data science team, a single person clapping, then Sarah's team, then the front row. Within 3 seconds, the entire room, all 200 people, were on their feet. The applause wasn't polite. It was a roar. It was a physical, emotional release. It wasn't just for me. It was for every person in that room who had a toxic parent, an abusive ex, a manipulative sibling. It was for every hour of lost sleep, every panic attack in a bathroom stall, every time they had to mute a call to cry. I was giving them what I had never had, an institution that would back them, a fortress. I let them clap. I let the roar fill the space and echo off the glass. This was the real Q3 metric. This was the real valuation. When the applause finally subsided, Jonah, with a small, proud smile, walked over to me. He was holding a single, slim document folder. He handed it to me, along with a pen. "What's this?" Sarah asked, still standing. "Transparency," I said. I opened the folder. It was a 1-page document, a new addendum to our employee handbook. HR Memorandum 401, Point A, the no-contact family policy. "This," I said, "is a formal declaration. It states, in plain English, that this company recognizes that not all family is safe. It outlines the exact, non-negotiable procedures for reporting, blocking, and if necessary, pursuing legal action against any external party, family or otherwise, who engages in coercive or harassing behavior against one of our employees." I placed the paper on the podium. "It states, unequivocally, that your work email, your work phone, and this office are a sanctuary. We will protect it. We will protect you. Your performance will be measured by your work, not by your ability to manage the people who try to tear you down." I uncapped the pen. The room was silent. I signed it, my signature, clear and firm. I held it up for the camera, for the room. "This will be in every employee's inbox by noon." I handed it back to Jonah. The deed was done. "Thank you," Sarah, I said. She nodded, her eyes shining, and sat down. Now, I said, turning back to the KPIs. Q4, our projected churn rate is... We continued the meeting. For another 30 minutes, we talked about numbers, we talked about code, we talked about logistics. It was the most focused, electric, and productive all-hands we have ever had. The crisis hadn't derailed us. It had forged us. When the meeting wrapped, I stayed at the podium, answering questions. One by one, my team leads came up. Marin, my head of engineering said, what you did. My father. He's a lot like yours. Thank you. For showing me how to... Thank you. My team is ready. We'll hit the V.4 deadline. No question. Boss, my head of sales said, a woman who could talk a statue into buying a timeshare. I've seen some hostile negotiations. That was a masterclass. I'm taking my team for a drink. And we're rewriting our objection handling scripts, using your model. One by one, they came. They didn't offer sympathy. They didn't coddle me. They offered what I had always wanted. Respect and work. Finally, the room was empty. Just me and Jonah. Well, he said, adjusting his tie, that's $2.2 million in options we just recovered for the company pool. I smiled. Good. Put it in the resilience fund. He looked at me. All of it? All of it, I said, and send a $1,000 bonus to Sarah. She earned it. He nodded, a look of profound respect on his face. Yes, boss. He turned and left, leaving me alone in the vast, quiet room. The adrenaline was fading. The deep, ancient bone weariness was starting to set in. I walked to the vast, floor-to-ceiling glass wall. The 28th floor view of Grayford. The city was laid out below me, a map of my own ambition. The sun was bright, the sky a harsh, unforgiving blue. I looked at my reflection in the glass. For years, my reflection was a stranger, a tired, haunted girl, a woman bracing for the next impact. I saw the girl on the porch, locked out. I saw the young woman in the HR office, being told to be more feminine. I saw the CEO, running on spite and caffeine, my hands trembling so badly in the early mornings I could barely type. The woman in the glass today was not trembling. She was still, she was calm. Her eyes were not haunted, they were clear. She was not the 18-year-old girl. She was not the 23-year-old. She was all of them, integrated, healed, and in control. I was no longer a woman running from something. I was a woman standing on something, a fortress I had built, stone by painful stone. My phone, sitting on the podium, buzzed, a single, sharp vibration. I walked over, a text notification on the lock screen. From Andrew Carr, State Attorney's Office, Securities Divo. Ms. Cole, we are in receipt of your counsel's file regarding Damon Reeves. The evidence of unauthorized transfer of proprietary code is conclusive. A hearing for a preliminary injunction and criminal referral has been set for tomorrow, 9 a.m. A marshal is being dispatched to Mr. Reeves's office as we speak. We will be in touch. The wheels of justice, clean, procedural, inevitable. I read the message. I felt nothing. No surge of victory, no desire for revenge. Just the quiet satisfaction of a system working as designed, a transaction completing. I didn't reply. I didn't save the message. I pressed the power button, and the screen went black. The work of the day was waiting. The lawsuit was just paperwork. I turned back to the window. Across the room, on the main wall, the massive digital status board glowed. It was the public-facing monitor that tracked our core systems. Praxis Ledger, global uptime, 99.98%. The numbers were green, steady, unblinking, a testament to a system that was redundant, resilient, and unbreakable. I looked at the number, and for the first time in my life, I smiled. A real, genuine smile. My heart, too. I turned from the window. The 99.98% uptime statistic glowed green, a silent testament. The adrenaline of the confrontation, the audit, the final, surgical removal of the cancer. It was gone. All that was left was the clean, cold hum of the server room and the sharp, focused energy of my team. They were still there, not packing up, but waiting, notebooks open. The Q4 KPI slide was still projected behind me. They had seen the fortress withstand a siege. Now, they were ready to get back to building it. I walked back to the podium. My voice, when I spoke, was not the voice of a victim or a warrior. It was just the voice of their CEO. "Thank you," I said, my voice crisp and clear. "That concludes the internal security audit." A few of my engineers actually smiled, a sharp, appreciative grin. "Now," I continued, "back to the work, V2.4. I looked at my head of engineering. "We ship V2.4 tonight. That's the only party we never miss." He nodded, his eyes bright. "We're on it, boss. Final checks are running now." "Good." I turned to the AV booth. "Mike, keep the internal archive feed rolling. I want the record to show exactly how this day ended." The red REC light stayed on. I looked at the main camera, the one that had broadcast my parents' humiliation and Damon's destruction to our investors. "To our partners on the line," I said, "thank you for your patience. The disruption is over. We are back to work." I signaled for Mike to cut the external feed. The investor call went dark. But the internal camera, the one for my history, remained. Mike switched the main screen feed to a new source, my laptop's desktop. I brought up the deployment manifest, the final checklist for V2.4. The code Damon had tried to name his conspiracy after, the code he had tried to claim, then poison. It was ready. As I moved my mouse toward the final authorization, a new email notification slid onto my secondary monitor. I glanced at it. The sender was Arthur Vance, Esquire, the lawyer. Subject, withdrawal of claim, Re. Cole. Body, on behalf of my former clients, Alden and Lena Cole, all claims, verbal or written, discussed today are hereby formally and permanently withdrawn. We extend our sincerest apologies for the interruption to your business operations. I read the words, former clients. He had already fired them. Interruption to your business operations, not extortion, not conspiracy, not fraud, an interruption. It was the last, pathetic piece of paperwork from a world I had just finished burning down. I didn't reply. I didn't save it. I didn't delete it. I just clicked away. It was irrelevant, a ghost in the machine. I moved my cursor back to the deployment window. Authorize. Deploy V2.4 to global production. I thought about the cold garage. I thought about the 3,200. I thought about the 18-hour days, fueled by stale coffee and a core of pure, crystalline rage. I thought about the signature on the loan application. I thought about the invoice for $1.2 million. My finger rested on the trackpad. I thought about the $45 million valuation. I clicked. The button flashed, then turned a solid, steady green. Deployment in progress. I clapped my laptop shut. The sound, a dull thud, was the only gavel I needed. "Meeting adjourned," I said. The room exhaled. 200 chairs scraped back. 200 notebooks snapped shut. The low professional murmur of my team filled the silence. They weren't gossiping. They weren't whispering about the drama. They were talking about server loads. They were discussing the new patch. They were moving, energized and focused, back to their desks. The crisis was over. The work had begun. I picked up my bag. Jonah was waiting for me by the door. As I walked past the massive whiteboard wall where the sales team tracked their metrics, I saw a new line of text. Someone, Sarah, probably, had written it in the bottom corner in sharp black marker. "Boundaries are love in straight lines." I stopped. I looked at it. I didn't erase it. I just nodded. Once. I walked out into the main corridor. The light here was softer, warmer. Jonah fell into step beside me, his tablet in his hand. "The board is calling an emergency session," he said quietly, not looking up. "Not for you, for them. to unanimously ratify the stock retrieval from Reeves and to begin formal censure proceedings against Norcrest. Good, I said. And Andrew Carr's office called again. The U.S. Marshals have officially served Damon Reeves at his desk. He's been suspended. They found the encrypted drive. He's done. Good, I said. We reached the main elevator bank. The doors were polished steel, reflecting the hallway like a dark mirror. I stopped, and my reflection stopped with me. The woman in the reflection, CEO, founder, alone. But the word didn't sting. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't the lonely, terrified girl my father had tried to conjure. It was just a fact, a statement of presence. I was the one who had been there. I was the one who had stayed. I was the one who had built the walls. There was no victory speech. There was no epilogue. There were no tears. I just let out a breath. A long, slow, quiet breath that I felt like I had been holding for 15 years. The account was settled. The ledger was balanced. I looked at the woman in the glass. I whispered it, just loud enough for me to hear. Paid in full. I pressed the button for the elevator. The doors opened. I stepped inside. The screen cuts to black. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'm so curious. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments below so we can connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and giving this video a like. And if you really want to support the channel, please hit that hype button. It makes a huge difference and helps this story get heard by so many more people.